Since picking up a new Nintendo 2DS XL at the beginning of June for just $100 at Walmart, a deal that I'd recommend to anybody that has any interest in ever playing any 3DS family of console games, I've been playing a lot of Pokemon titles. Now I finally finished a cartridge that I'd started years ago of Pokemon Black, finally beat the Elite Four on that, and then for the first time I went and played through Pokemon Y, as well as Pokemon Ultra Moon, a game that I thoroughly enjoyed and made its own video on. And now I wanted to go ahead and actually for the first time experience Heart Gold in its remade form. I had played Crystal back in the day, and then also I have never played Gen 4. It's the only generation I've never played, and I've heard so many great things about it, so I'm excited to try that out. But it was kind of a debate for me. You know, what do I play these on? Of course, nowadays you can play a DS game on your phone very easily. However, it's not something I'd recommend to anybody, just because I think it's very cumbersome to try and use the touchscreen when you also have on-screen buttons being thrown at you, and then you have the two screens of the DS. It just is a lot going on screen, not something I'd recommend. So I want to compare three different ways that you could effectively play a backup copy of something like Heart Gold or, Pokemon Platinum or whatever today, and what I think is the best way to go about doing it. So the three ways we're going to discuss is you could play it via TwighlightMenu on a 3DS or a DS. That would just be basically via emulation of sorts on the 3DS in that case, but it's with the homebrew app that's going to be able to launch the ROM from an SD card rather than from a cartridge. The second way I want to discuss is through a flash cart or a multi-cart. I've talked a lot in this channel before about the 208-in-1 game cartridge, and I'll talk more about that here, as I think that's one of the best ways to go about playing original DS games. And then lastly, I want to mention is fake cartridge per se, or the remanufactured cartridges that you can buy on eBay. Typically you can find these for say like $20 for a copy of Heart Gold, significantly less than the game truly costs, but it is a remanufactured Heart Gold copy that someone just made and is selling, and we'll talk about why that's not a very good option compared to the other two. So first off, TwighlightMenu. This is basically a homebrew app that runs on both the DS line of consoles as well as the 3DS line of consoles, and it's actually relatively the same app on both, though I don't know if the new updates that continue to come out actually can have an impact on the original DS version of TwighlightMenu. But basically this is an app that you load via an SD card on a modded system that lets you launch DS games via their .nds ROM file. It also lets you enable cheat codes via a cheat database you can download. This works, I think, relatively conveniently on the original Nintendo DS system. However, on the 3DS, it's a little bit more of a hassle. You have to open the homebrew app, then launch the games. You can create like a forwarder that you click on, just basically a game icon from your 3DS home screen that kicks you straight into the ROM, though you have to create the forwarder on your computer, and it's a little bit more tedious. It also takes like 30 seconds to load, which feels a lot longer than it sounds when you're waiting for it to start the game. But this is a great option, and I think that the ability that you can enable cheat codes here is really important as you're playing through some of these older Pokemon games, Generation 4 or Generation 5. I think that if you haven't played them in a while, and if you played them back in the day, you've probably forgotten how slow the games are in terms of their text speed, their movement speed. When you talk about, just NPCs moving around you in like a sort of cutscene sense where you're locked and you can't move and they're talking to you, especially in the beginning of the games, it is painfully slow. And using a speed multiplier cheat code, which I'm playing Heart Gold on a ×2 speed multiplier cheat code, really gets the text and just the people moving a lot faster, and it makes the game be that much more playable and enjoyable rather than the slog that I think it is to go back to some of these older titles. I know it's a particular complaint about the Generation 4 games, and those speed cheat codes can go a long way, so I would not recommend playing the games without those speed cheat codes. Then of course you can use cheat codes to do other things as well. Now the neat thing about playing this on a 3DS via TwighlightMenu is you can actually use that PKSM app that I talked about in my cheat codes video a few weeks back to actually manipulate the save. So if you want to pull in an event Pokemon, if you want to just max level a Pokemon, change its IVs or EVs, held items. If you want to change really anything about the game, from the items you have to the Pokemon you have, you can just generate something. It's a very convenient graphical homebrew application to do that. It really looks just like the PC box in the Pokemon Center, except you have like full reign control over just editing whatever you want. And it's an awesome application to make changes to your save, and that's something you can only do if you play these games on the 3DS using TwighlightMenu. So I think that is probably the most superior way to play the games. However, it does take a lot more setup if you don't have a modded DS system yet, or if you don't have TwighlightMenu set up, or if you want to make those forwarders. It's just a lot of setup being involved there. So if that's not something you're interested in, playing via a multi-cart or a flash cart is a great way to go. Now, this 208-in-1 Multicart is basically a Nintendo DS cartridge that you can play even on a 3DS, even just fully upgraded to the newest firmware. This new Nintendo 2DS XL that I got a couple of months ago, back here at the beginning of June, I put the cartridge into that with it fully updated, and it could read the Multicart. So this Multicart, it has 208 Nintendo DS ROMs on it, as well as their cheat codes, which again, very important. It lets you have that speed boost or whatever modifications you want to make there. So all the Pokemon games are in that, and you can just stick that cartridge into any non-modded, doesn't have to be modded, 3DS or DS or DSi or so forth, and you can play the games that way. It'll display that the game is like SpongeBob's Atlantic Squarepants or something like that. Once you click on it and you go into the game, you quickly discover that it is the flash cart and has all the games and cheat codes and whatnot on there. So a very convenient way to go about playing these, because you spend like say $20 on this multi-cart, maybe $30 on eBay, and what you're really getting is 208 games, including the cheat codes, and it's all just set up for you, so it's very easy to go about using. So if you don't have a modded console, I think 100% this is the way to go about doing it. And lastly, I want to compare that to the similar but very different option, which is to spend something like say $20 on buying a Heart Gold cartridge that's fake or remanufactured. You see this particularly with the Gen 2 remakes, but you may find remanufactured or fake cartridges with the Gen 4 games too. You particularly also see it with the Game Boy Advance games. And this is something that I absolutely hate. These remanufactured cartridges are known to die. They don't hold their saves. They're very problematic because they're not made with the highest degree of quality, obviously. Now, this is very different than that multi-cart, the 208-in-1. So the 208-in-1 is, like I said, a flash cartridge. Now that has an SD card on the top, just a micro SD card. You can pull it out, put it into your computer. It'll really come up with the list of every single game that's on there. You could copy all 208 of them off onto your computer and put them on your phone, play them on an emulator if you wanted to, because all the game files are on there and accessible via that SD card. Now, if you use a fake cartridge or a remanufactured cartridge, you have no way to take those files off. So if the cartridge fails, it's over. Now, on the 208-in-1, if the cartridge fails, you should be able to take that SD card out, put it into your computer, your saves and everything is still there. So worst case, if you have to go and buy a new 208-in-1 cartridge, you could put that SD card into it, your original SD card, and you would just be able to take off where you left off. And of course, with a fake cartridge, you would never be able to recover that save data. It would just be lost. But with the 208-in-1, you're able to actually recover your saves because it's on an SD card rather than the cartridge itself, and that's the big difference. So in closing, I'll say both of these first two options are great, but it really boils down to if you have a modded 3DS or not. Obviously, if you don't have a modded 3DS, the second way, using the multi-cart, is going to be the way to go, unless you're interested in getting that 3DS modded, which is something I would recommend checking out because it is relatively easy to do. And if you are interested in using PKSM and just summoning whatever Pokemon you want into your box and doing all kinds of crazy edits like that, you're going to want to play it on a 3DS using TwighlightMenu. But if you're looking to be able to play the game, have the saves stored on a cartridge that you can move back and forth between multiple DSs, then using the 208-in-1 or some sort of multi-cart or flash cart is definitely going to be the way to go. and as well as just being, I think, far more convenient for someone to set up if they don't have the knowledge on how all these things work. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I'll see you in the next video.